Right? Give it a good tap. I'd like to call the Foster-Glocester School Committee of Tuesday, May 12th to order. Can I get a roll call, please?
Ms. Joyce?
Here.
Ms. Tamara? Here. Mrs. Pezza? Mr. Dupuis?
Here.
Mrs. Keeling? Here. Mr. Joyce? Here. Mrs. Cook?
Here.
Ms. Ferreira? Mr. Rizzo?
Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is this being aired?
No, it's being recorded. We'll put it up after.
Discussion and public comment action on the following, the fiscal year 27 budget.
Oh, sorry. You're good. Hello, good evening. So in order to continue with the budget questions, it seemed that there would be some information to share up front so that we can continue with the conversation or the discussion. It's my understanding that the purpose of this meeting was to discuss the reduction in the $882,000 reduction in expenditures. So as we move forward, we've heard some questions on some key terms. They are important budget terms, and we're just hoping that everyone can have an understanding. Local appropriations, that you hear that is really taxes paid by the local towns. And this year's local appropriations are $18,058,039. The maintenance of effort, those two terms typically go together. That is the amount contributed by the community, and it cannot be less than the previous year, except for two specific reasons, and that's in the legislation. So this year's local appropriations, maintenance of effort, is $18,058,039, and that's why the budget was posted as a 0% increase. State aid is a term you often hear, and that's state funds appropriated for educational purposes, and it does not include a transportation pass-through. Sometimes there's a misunderstanding with that. So if you're reading state aid, you have to be sure that you exclude the transportation pass-through. When we created this budget, so if you look in your budget, currently the state aid proposal or expected revenue is $6,013,588. That was as of January 2026. Last week, or about a week and a half ago, we got an updated proposal, which is in the May amount, so May 26, which was about $10,000 higher than what we had originally put in the budget. And then you heard, or would have heard, last week's meeting, Attorney Picciarelli used the word supplant and supplement. And the easiest way to really understand that is, if that gets discussed a little bit more, is supplant is to really replace something, and to supplement is to enhance it or add to it. And we'll talk about that with respect to educational programs and state aid. So we just felt it was important that there are some terms that people maybe aren't clear about, and we use them kind of interchangeably. You'll hear maintenance of effort, or MOE, that's what that is, and local appropriations. That's really what impacts the taxpayers. And as we talk about this budget preparation and the reduction of the $882,000, that does not impact local appropriations, because local appropriations was at a 0% increase. So reducing those expenditures does not impact the taxes or have any change on what the towns have to give the school. And then this is just a reminder that on page 8 of your budget, that's where you'll see the total appropriation. Foster pays less than they did last year, and Gloucester has to increase about 2.88%. But if you look at the 25-26 budget, it was that 18 million, and the 26-27 budget is 18 million as well. So just to understand, the 0% increase to local appropriations means that the taxes, the amount appropriated by the towns, does not increase from the previous year. And then this is the general law that I referenced. It's just important to understand what governs schools and their budgets. And there are those three words again, or three terms, I should say: maintenance of effort, MOE, local appropriation, and state funds. And I did link it here. There's also a hard copy for anyone who is interested. And Attorney Picciarelli, I don't know if you wanted to speak at all about A and or D. But right here in the second line, is what says, each community shall contribute local funds to its school committee in the amount not less than local contribution for schools in the previous fiscal year. So that's the governing legislation. And then down at the bottom, this is what Attorney Picciarelli referenced the other day about our state funds.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I don't know that I need to add anything to what I've already said at the last meeting, but if anybody has any questions or they come up during the meeting, we can address them.
Okay, and I'm just going to draw your attention to the part that was stated was down here. Whenever state funds are appropriated for educational purposes, this is where the questions may come. These funds shall be used for educational purposes only, and all state funds appropriated for these purposes must be used to supplement, not in any way, direct or indirect, cannot be used to supplant, and you must use those funds in the fiscal year in which you receive them. So I just thought it was important because I referenced the law, but for you to actually see it, it helps frame the understanding of the budgetary process. We're asked for student enrollment data, and in order to answer the question about prior to me being superintendent, I know, Shelley, there was a question about the previous administration did not include homeschool. We have to find the census data that is not in the office right now, so we have to dig a little deeper to get that information, but I can tell you that in researching this, for budgetary purposes, homeschool children should be included for the following reasons. At any point, they are allowed to and can return to in-person learning, and that has happened to us over the years, that a homeschool student would return. They can access a course or courses. They're allowed to access special education services. In fact, it's our responsibility to reach out and ensure that they're receiving special education services. They can't deny it, but they're allowed to access special ed services. They're allowed to participate in sports and extracurricular activities. They can access our curriculum, and we are required per General Law 16-19-2 to monitor their progress, which is the compulsory attendance. So there is an administrative cost to students who are homeschooled. And if these students were to return to school and they weren't included in our state aid, then they would be unfunded.
May I please ask a question? Sorry.
Yeah. I think we're gonna wait till, write down your question. We're gonna hold
let
all
me
questions to the end, let her get through the whole presentation.
Just included this just as a reminder, separate from the expected reduction in expenditures, is a reminder that the 154 for the water bond was a debt that was funded by the school. That was through the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank. It was a special meeting. The towns in no way paid for that. It was not part of local appropriations. It was not part of the MOE. It came from the school's fund balance at that year. That's how it was advertised. Right there, will you be using fund balance, the funds provided by the state of Rhode Island, and make payments as a lease purchase agreement. So the towns did not contribute to that in their local appropriations when it was approved by the taxpayers at the special financial town meeting. And here are the minutes again, and it was reiterated by Dr. Barnes. He reported the district will be using fund balance and funds provided by the state of Rhode Island because there was a $200,000 loan forgiveness. So the loan was for $800,000, but there was a $200,000 loan forgiveness, so the district held the $600,000 lease. And then there have been some questions about extra padding or money in some different places, and I just wanted to bring back and remind the fiscal responsibility part, the district key points, and this committee has supported this process, where in the summer of '22 there were many vacant positions, but these were the 5 that I would draw your attention to. We had an assistant superintendent, director of school counseling, student supports, a CTE supervisor, director of facilities, and assistant director of facilities. And in the first year, I took those 3 positions and I combined them to a director of student supports, which actually is Karen's position, and then I absorbed some of the assistant superintendent roles, and we did not hire assistant director of facilities until about 18 months or so into that my tenure. And we continue with the practice of hiring positions based on the district needs. So, and this committee has been very supportive of that, asking what we need, how we need it, and so it has been a slow process in filling some of the positions, but they were intentional. And I will draw your attention again, this was a slide that was shared at the first financial town meeting, that over the years, this is how much if we had continued from previous positions to where we are now, it's over about $1 million saved in salary and benefits over the last 4 years. In addition, last year when I came in front of you and presented this year's budget of FY26, we had eliminated some positions and consolidated positions. So we had 2 school counselors at the middle school. There was a school counselor who retired. We did not fill that position. A secretary was reassigned to a different position at the high school. A math coach retired and was not replaced, and 2 part-time teachers were not replaced. We worked last year to align the middle school and the high school schedules so we could consolidate and share some staff while also growing programs. I'll give you an example. You were all very supportive of Spanish at the middle school, and so we had a teacher who went back and forth between both buildings. In order to consolidate those positions, we needed to adjust the schedule. We also sought many grant opportunities to support some of the work that we knew that we needed to do. And then I think this is important to understand. I'm not sure if it was clearly articulated. I know there's some confusion. But when we created this budget for FY27, how did we get to a 0% increase in local appropriations? And it's important to share that the budget process starts in October. Department chairs make their proposals. And I did share this at the February and March school committee meeting. And then we look at the numbers and we went back to each department and they had to reduce their budget. So we worked with the department chairs and with the budget preparers and the school administrators to reduce the department proposals. In addition, we consolidated positions, and our original proposal to you with a 0% increase in local appropriations had a reduction of 7 faculty and staff members. It's not the 7 that I put on the personnel actions last week. Our original proposal already reduced 7 staff members. It's important as we continue to talk through the budget process. The primary revenue sources, state aid, which I spoke a little bit about earlier, anticipated and estimated based on the governor's proposal in January. Pretty much our final draft is presented to you in February. If you have any input, we then change from February to March, and then it's presented at the March school committee meeting with the public hearing. We get an update in May from state aid. Keep in mind that that is typically after the budget is adopted. So when we give you the proposal in January, our budget is prepared. It's based on what the governor presents. And the final state aid numbers come in after our budget is adopted, which is why there has been a practice of including fund balance, and it has not been used, and I'll go through that slide again. Local appropriations, again, revenue from taxes, and then tuition. That's our 3rd large bucket of revenue. This is important, and there's some confusion around it. Tuition is definitely comes from other districts that pay us for their students to attend our CTE programs. That amount is dictated by the state, and it varies for each district. It's estimated, our estimate in the budget when we prepare it in February is estimated in February, and then we work towards completing the high school schedule, which is just about now. But it's not finalized until the students actually enter in September. So I know there's been lots of questions around why is your budgeted tuition revenue much less than your actual each year, and it's a very easy answer in that when we propose the budget, we will be very conservative because we don't want to assume that students are definitely going to come until they actually walk in the door, and sometimes we don't know those numbers until we finalize the schedule. And it also depends on students' interest. So I'd say, for example, we might have a year where there are many students who are interested in firefighting, and we had that last year. Those students could come in, but we might be full in our animal and plant science. So we really have to look at the student interest, look at the finalized schedule, and then those students will be offered an opportunity to come, but our budget is already approved in March. These final decisions don't happen until May and June. And so this is a visual for those of you who are visual people. This is a really good outline of the CTE enrollment process. We start this really just starting looking at who's graduating in both our CTE program and our in-district kids. And we look at how many spaces we have available in seats. We start with the 8th grade open house in October to welcome people to come and look at our building. Then in January, February, students complete their course requests. In district students, they complete the course requests for both the middle school and high school. Then, now in that time, from the schedule being created, we present a budget to you to be approved in March. But in March and April are when sections are determined. From there, finalized schedule is built, then we can invite in more students if we have the sections for them, which we typically do. And then if you look at the last one, if there are openings in the CTE programs and content areas, we're able to follow our policy and accept students who are placed on a wait list. So we have the students ready to come, then we have another, hey, we have some extra spaces, come in, and then we also have a wait list because a student may say, yes, 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 I'm coming, and then they may change their mind. So we have a wait list for students who are interested and eligible. So that's why you'll see a fluctuation in our CTE tuition process. And I will say that that is the process that has been followed since from previous administration. Dr. Barnes was really very smart in the way he worked that process. I showed this slide at the last financial town meeting because FY19 is really what I went back to, which is a time when CTE really started to develop and increase. And if you remember, this was a question on your local appropriations, your budgeted increase. This year in FY27, we are proposing a 2.81 increase. Last year, we proposed a 2.08 increase. But local appropriations is 0. Last year, local appropriations was 1.74%. So in all of those years, the actual use of fund balance, the answer is no. And I can say, although we're not done with the year, I can say comfortably that we're not going to use fund balance again, even though we did budget for it last year in the budget that was approved. So I think it's important to understand the process, that some of these questions aren't so easily answered with why is this number different from this number. I can tell you that in speaking with, I've worked in both Foster, right, elementary school, and I've worked in Gloucester elementary schools, and I've been the superintendent at the region. I've done all 3 levels. The process is the same. That when you create a budget is an estimate with the information you have at that time. And I think it's a good situation that we're in, where our revenue for CTE has been higher than we've budgeted. We have not been in a deficit like other districts are across the state. So I thought it was important just to share that process and share some of the terms to understand where we are in some of that language, and also to clarify the budget process. As a region, with the charter, you are in a unique situation where other districts across the state are finalizing their budgets in May and up for vote, where we have to have ours finalized and voted on in March, which means we really have some preliminary numbers in December and January. And I know that the reason for this meeting, at least I believe it to be, was that last week I had put personnel actions in front of you. I did say that it was not my recommendation, but in order for us to meet the June 1st deadline of laying teachers off, and salary and benefits is a large part of our budget, that was a proposal that was put in front of you. I want to also reiterate that as we talk about reducing expenditures, our revenue is not decreasing, and I had said that earlier. Our revenue will still come in, and that I think that is when you have that state aid question of supplant versus supplement. If the money comes in and you don't use it, you could lose it. Also, in the meantime, while creating the budget and finalizing the budget, which was approved, or which was presented in March, we received finalized numbers for benefits, and our percentage has gone up from 5% to 10%, which was an increase in expenditures of about $155,000. An additional increase in expenditures of about $155,000. So when we had to reduce expenditures, knowing that that's not something we can reduce, there's an extra layer of where did those cuts come from? Thank you.
Thank you. So back to the homeschool request. You made a comment, I might have heard you wrong, that that's why you receive state aid for them. We do not receive, could you please show me where we receive state aid for homeschool students? Because I have talked to several, and I just want to, that's fine, I just want to see it, where we receive state aid and where they say to count them in the local appropriation.
So in my presentation, I did not say we receive state aid for
I
them.
misunderstood you then.
We would look into it. But I
Okay.
did say that including them in our enrollment numbers for the following reasons is what the recommendation is and what we have done since I've been superintendent.
Have you received anything in writing from RIDE supporting that statement?
No.
Okay,
I
so,
have not, no, I have not reached out to RIDE. We have a different, I know you said that you spoke with someone at RIDE. I do not know the data person you spoke with, and I don't know who to start calling, Shelley.
that's fine, so I just want, because I have not found anyone to support that statement yet, so if you're saying that it's legal to count homeschool students, then I would request that we get it in writing from RIDE or from someone, I don't care if it's the Auditor General, I don't care who it is, but someone should be confirming that that is what is normal and that is what is accepted practice, please. Because if we're gonna charge taxpayers for students that are not here.
Can I respond to that?
Yes.
Ms. Pezza, did you get a copy of my email that I asked Ms. Fratz to send just about an hour or two ago?
The one from, I got the one that you sent yesterday, and Catone's on vacation all week, so we're not gonna get a response from that this week.
That's incorrect. He did respond.
Oh, did he? Because, okay.
And I forwarded that response as well as my response to his response, or my reply to his response.
Okay, so I've been working. Did he say that to count homeschool students?
So I asked him a series of questions based upon statements that were made at the last meeting. He confirmed he had talked to you. He denied that he had any discussion with you that the general ledger was either a public document or that you had a right to see it as a committee member. He specifically denied that he told you that. With regard to the homeschooling question, he said, he confirmed that he told you he didn't know the answer to it. He did not respond to my request to name the persons that he gave you. Well, he didn't tell me what he told you about that. Nor did he respond to my request that he provide me with any information that RIDE has as to how they define declining enrollment. He just ignored my request. So I repeated it in my reply to him today. He also brought up that he apparently has a practice of having confidential phone calls with school committee members, maybe even in other districts, and he doesn't feel that he has an obligation to disclose them, but he disclosed this because you disclosed it publicly. I found that curious because he is not legal counsel to this committee, or any committee member. He has no attorney-client relationship with you, so any conversations he has with you or any school committee member is not confidential. So having said all that, I will just add one last point about declining enrollment. Declining enrollment can mean something different than state aid reimbursement for your average daily membership. They're in two different statutes. They mean two different things. So to keep repeating that you have found no one who will confirm that homeschooling students shouldn't be included in declining enrollment may not be accurate if what you're really asking them is, do you get state aid reimbursement for home? Those are two different things. So again, it is very difficult to sit here and try to respond to legal arguments when offhand comments are made, I talked to someone, or I haven't been able to find anyone who can confirm this. Those are not helpful for me to be able to give legal advice to this committee on this issue.
Well, all I'm asking for is for confirmation from you or anyone saying that, yes, you do in fact count homeschool students in local appropriation or in the total enrollment. That's all I'm asking you to do. That's you're an attorney.
I would reiterate, the statute says that a community that has declining enrollment may calculate maintenance of effort based upon average daily membership, or what's the, I forget the.
Yes, but if they're not
Per
in
pupil, I'm sorry,
school-
per pupil, based upon per pupil expenditure. That's
But
what the
if
statute.
they're not in school, they're not in attendance, they're not in the enrollment.
Can-
Because
can I-
we do
can
not
I-
count them.
Can I finish my thought, please, without being interrupted? So, when it says a community that has a decrease in enrollment may compute maintenance of effort on a per pupil rather than aggregate basis, my interpretation of that is the burden falls on the two communities, the towns of Foster and the towns of Gloucester, to make their determination that they believe there's been a decline in enrollment, or that they're relying upon the second provision that says that there has been a decrease in non-recurring expenses, which, by the way, has to be approved by the commissioner. We have confirmed, Ann has confirmed, at least from Kelly Russ and Foster, that Foster did in fact vote to decrease their maintenance of effort. But they've provided no explanation as to whether they're doing it based on declining enrollment, whether they're doing it based upon decreased non-recurring expenditure, or they're just relying upon the vote and nothing else. But the burden is on the towns, I would argue, to come to this committee and say, we're calculating on the basis of declining enrollment, this is how this is the enrollment decline that we believe, and this is the average, this is the per pupil expenditure, and give you that number. The 154,000 bears no relation to that. So,
Brandon?
Yeah, I just had a question. I don't think Foster counts the homeschool kids in their total student count. Does Gloucester? Do you guys know? I don't know. Okay. And I understand all the back and forth with regards to the legal side of things to a certain point. But ultimately, we need to work with our local communities. My suggestion would be that we have the logic behind what you're saying, Greg. If we humbly let them know that this is what we are planning to do and we're asking for their support in doing so, because if not, we will be forced to incur some further budget cuts, we might get a more receptive response than, sort of waiting for them and being a little bit more aggressive. I understand what you're saying. I don't want to end up in court. I'm not suggesting that is what this committee wishes for either. But if we continue going down this path, I do believe that's where we will end up, and no one is served by that. Not Foster, not Gloucester, and certainly not everyone who is in this building and the middle school. So that is why we have our approach. If we go before our partners, which are those two towns, and let them know what we're planning to do and ask them to support us so that we can minimize the damage up here, I think that's the approach we should take.
Do you want to hear my suggestions for cuts with the budget that I had that was presented from last month? Because I did not have a general ledger, and according to, just so you know, Greg, according to 38-2-1, financial records, including general ledger, are considered public records. So school committee members are able to get them. With that being said, would you like to hear my recommendations, or are we just going to sit here and argue?
I think a productive dialogue is where we are, because we
Absolutely.
have to make decisions with respect to.
I didn't feel like we were having a productive dialogue, but absolutely. Would you like to hear my suggestions? That from what I found, just going through the budget without having the information that I requested?
Let's do it.
Okay. Well, I noticed in the budget that I was unaware of, there was a position that was added in the athletic help supervisor line, which including salaries was an $86,000 increase. I don't know pages, because I made notes when I went through stuff, and I just made a spreadsheet. So yeah. So, I mean, I didn't create the budget, so whoever created the budget might know why was there an increase in $86,000, including health. The position itself was 51, the benefits was 35, and that was zero, that was a non, it was in, it was in the athletic, it was in like I said, I don't wanna go through it line by line, this is, we can
We're
take.
gonna have to.
I made notes, hold on, I made notes on my phone. Well, that's one. So that,
Do you want,
well, it's gonna take time, because I have to go through now and find where I found it. I made notes.
It was under athletics?
Nope, it's under extracurricular activities, coaches, staff, related sports.
So it's,
5102, UCOA line. Co-curricular activities, athletics.
Okay, hold on, I'm looking.
it's under the salary line, Shelley?
Proposed salary, 51,000. Benefits is 35.
Co-curricular activities, athletic fees, yes?
Did anyone find it? What page? Page 24. Co-curricular.
Well, Renee, you created this budget. Did you create this position?
No, I think it's a reclassification of a UCOA code, Shelley.
But it was zero last year.
That's exactly what it would be, a reclassification of a position that was in the wrong UCOA code, or more aligned to the tasks would then be the UCOA code there. But I don't know what page you're on, and I don't know what you're talking about, so if you have that, that's.
Well,
all
it's
I can-
classified as athletic health supervisor. The salary is 51,000. Benefits is 35.
Okay, so that would be a reduction of 86? Is that what you have?
Yeah.
51 and 35?
Yes.
I still can't find
I can't find it. Do you have a full UCOA?
Full? No.
So really, I just have to look on the percentage change. And find the numbers that changed by, right? Does it show, you're saying it shows an increase.
Because it would say it was zero before.
Oh, I got it. Top of page 43. It says regular salary is an addition of 51,000.
51,000?
Mm-hmm. That's what I said, yeah, with benefits of 35. Because the benefit was new too, there was an increase in the benefits. So I know you can say it was a reclassification of the UCOA code, however, there was an increase of that amount relative to the position.
I'm on, right here, 43.
Yep, right here, 51,000.
Is that Michelle?
I'll put it.
She's in the middle school?
I wish I had a higher.
No, it was high school. Mark, I thought you found it.
I did.
Okay, Mark found it, okay. So, all right, so there was one.
Yeah, page 43. I understand.
So that was 86,000.
So hold on, no, that's.
Well, I had the salary. I don't have the where you're talking about the benefits.
Well, the benefits, you have to add it up and, yeah, that was a new.
Was it its own line item or is it
Benefits are, yeah, benefits have their own salary, have their own line item. They always do.
for the individual?
So there is. Page 43.
I'm just gonna write them.
It's like the fifth position down.
I feel like we should win a prize for finding that. That was a needle in a haystack.
A raise.
But that's, if that, straight up is true.
Yeah. Right,
So the line that comes from, it's a reclassification, refers them to the current position and put them in task that they're actually doing.
But it's showing an increase in the administrative whole department. So that's all. I want to make sure that's what, if that's a reclassification, fine, but it's showing a zero, and it's, so the overall salaries for the admin department is showing an increase.
Of
exactly 51,000?
No, because there's also salary increases too, and I understand that, because the step increases that are contractual, like proportionate to the teachers. I understand that, but it was beyond that, so that's my concern. But if you want, I'll continue. Okay, okay, I'll go back and I'll look at it. That's a reclassification of the UCOA. I'll make that note right now. In addition, so previously I did compare other positions. I know you say that you've consolidated positions. However, I went back to previous budgets prior to you, and the HR person and the business manager were the same. The controller and the accountant were the same person. So in that perspective, we have a whole person that's extra in the business department.
So let me ask you this question, because I can go over the last 4 years of how we've changed positions and increased positions, but there was a person who was an accountant and an HR manager, if you remember, that when I was hired, she was in that position. I laid that person off. We recreated a position. So there was a person who was your HR person who had a different title. You did have a senior accountant who was not certified to be an accountant, and she was doing your HR. So we went through the whole personnel walkthrough, and I can take you through all of that. But at the end, what we did was, there were people who were in positions that weren't certified or qualified. When their contracts expired, they were no longer in the position. We didn't fill it immediately. We looked at the need, and this district needed an HR manager who was solely for HR. But here's what I would ask. I think as we talk about the productive discussion and dialogue, do you have a recommendation to reduce the expenditures for 882, or?
I'm trying, Renee. I'm
Okay.
going through it. Do you want me to just, I said I'll go through it, and then Cindy said, no,
I
stop.
told her to go
You
one.
told me to
Okay,
stop.
yeah,
so
no, that's true.
I'm trying.
But as you say the consolidation of positions, I can absolutely explain to you how we got an HR manager, when we got an HR manager, and who was in your HR before. They had a contract that was part-time HR and part-time accountant. I don't know if you remember that contract. That's what Dr. Barnes had signed this person to be. When that person's contract was up, we did not renew it, and we took a little bit of time to see what we really needed, and we needed an HR manager. And you approved that contract.
Actually,
So
she
if-
left on her own, and she was business manager and HR.
No, that's not who I'm
Bridget
talking.
Ellman. Bridget
Shelley,
Ellman
that's
was
not who
H-
I'm talking about.
Well, she was the one who was HR. She was the one who was HR. And
Okay,
then the
but-
controller and the accountant were the same. So no matter how you cut it, that was one person doing two jobs. That's all I'm trying to say.
Okay, but there was two other people in the department that clearly you're unaware of. I don't want to put personnel information out there. I will give you that information separately if you'd like, but you have some information and not all of it. There were
Well-
two other people in the department, one of whom was an accountant and an HR person. Now, if you're telling me that your business manager also did HR, that's fine, but you had someone who was hired to do the other two positions, and I'm telling you, you had another person in there. So I don't know if you're aware of who was in your business department, but you had 4.5 people. I now have 5. So if you have a suggestion for a reduction in salary, I think I'm open to hearing it. The one that you just proposed could not be reduced because it's a reallocation or it's a reclassification of a UCOA.
Okay. All right, so I'll just keep on going. All right, professional tech services. We do not, that's not impacting the students. We have not exceeded the dollar amount. Make a $400,000 cut there.
Hold
That
on.
would not,
What page-
that's
what
professional
page are you on?
services on the main budget page, the UCOA code 53,000. We budgeted 934,000 in 25-26. We budgeted almost 1.1 million in 26-27. We have not spent more than 637 historically. That should be a cut, that's not impacting the kids.
Right, so I know this was a question that was asked earlier, so I was prepared to answer this. This year, what is included in those UCOA codes? So you could not reduce that by 400,000, here's why.
We had an increase to Northwest Special Ed for next year. We also had an increase to our Medicaid, the company that processed our Medicaid claims, because we had an increase in Medicaid claims. That's claim-based, so that also does affect or increase our revenue for that. But we had 2 nurses, one-on-one for special ed, that we needed to add to that category. We have diagnostics in there, we have that every year, and we don't, for special ed, we have to budget for that, we may not always use it. We haven't for the last couple years used much of that, but we always have to budget for it because we don't know. We had a $10,000 increase to our audit expense based on our contract that we have with them. Those are some of the bigger items. I don't know if there's a line item in particular that you wanted to look at cutting. I can look up.
But we did have an increase in nursing services for 2 students that will be with us next year, and they're required to have one-on-one nurses. It goes under that UCOA code. And then there's always been diagnostic testing. It's been in there for a very long time because you need to be prepared for in case you need to do assessments for students. This typically falls under the special ed setting. And then we've absorbed Northwest Special Ed services. As you know, Northwest Special Ed has dissolved, and so we definitely did incur an increase in our special ed services that we cannot decrease because we have students who they service. So if you have a particular line item?
Could I ask a couple questions about that? Thank you for that, first of all. Regarding the diagnostic services, I think that's good conservative budgeting to basically make sure that we're covering what might happen, but perhaps this isn't the year to do that. Is there opportunity, or would the committee be amenable to perhaps scaling it back to what we spent this year? And unfortunately, if we were to go over that next year, that might be an appropriate use of fund balance and an adjustment of the budget the following year. I get what you're saying, and in a normal year, I would generally agree with you, but I do think we need to look for places like that where we're being a little bit heavy in what we're budgeting, and realizing that risk with fund balance if we absolutely had to.
Renee, I feel like I'm trying to have a conversation, and because I did not get the information that I requested, this conversation is almost mute. I understand that everyone's busy. I respect that. However, we want to have an educated and prepared conversation, and I'm trying to make suggestions. And because I did not receive any of the information that I requested, this is nearly impossible. If we have year-to-date of where we are up to now, comparing it to the budgeted actuals of 25-26 and what is budgeted for 26-27, this conversation will be a lot easier.
So here's what I would say to that. I agree that the dialogue is important, and knowing all the information up front is important. What I will say is, to offer clarification, and I said it last week, is the email you sent on Wednesday. I did call you back, you sent it to Ann. I did call you back to explain that I had confidential information. You weren't available, you couldn't talk, we spoke Thursday. You then made a different request that was not the same request. It was a different report that still had some confidential information. You sent that on Saturday. It was received Monday morning with another email that asked essentially for the entire budget with year-to-date information as of April 30th. This budget is not one button, it's not one click. And when we spoke with you last night, I did explain that to you, that it would be nearly impossible, and we were in negotiations until 7 o'clock. I'm not making excuses, but I'm giving you all information that whatever you need will be offered to you, but you have to respect the time that the people here have to put it together. And quite honestly, when the motion was made to cut $882,000, I would imagine that there should have been something in your mind to say we can cut $882,000 from here. If you're putting me on the spot to cut $882,000 in expenditures in a budget that took months to create, Shelley.
I'm listening.
I know, but I'm responding to you.
And I'm looking for the email of what I asked for Ann, because
I'll tell you what you asked for Ann. My point is,
so if you're gonna make accusations, I want you to make it.
I'm not making accusations, I'm clarifying things. That whatever you need, the information that you needed to make a motion to reduce something by $882,000, I imagine that you would have had that information in your hands before Saturday. And so if you wanted a new budget with up-to-date expenditures, that would have been helpful to know after or before you made the motion. It's not one document, it is a dump of a lot of documents. And every month, every school committee meeting, you do get the check registers, so you see what is spent. And this document hasn't changed with what's budgeted. So if there are areas that you think can be decreased, share them, keeping in mind that even though we are reducing expenditures, we are still going to have state aid and possible tuition to cover the expenses.
Absolutely. So I'm reading my email, my initial email that, yes, I sent it Friday night. I'm sorry, it was late, so it was Saturday morning by the time it was sent, and I apologize. It was like midnight. And it says, the ledger is completely confidential. I was reiterating what you said, saying that it was confidential, and I understood that. So I said that in the email, understanding that it is confidential and cannot be shared. Could you please forward the third quarter ledger or something comparable? I just wanted something comparable. And yes, I understand. I'll be honest with you. I did a level funded budget because there was 3 school committee members that asked for the budget to be on the agenda on April 7th. It was refused. I wanted to accurately represent the CTE revenue, and it wasn't. I wanted to eliminate fund balance. That conversation was not allowed at the school committee meeting.
Shelley, I am here to answer your questions about the budget. If you have a legal question about with the April 7th, that would be for Attorney Picciarelli when he said the budget could not be changed per the charter. My ask is that I need you all to decide how you're going to reduce expenditures by $882,000, $853,000 on a budget that we presented that had a 0% increase to local appropriations, because the expected expenditures, which haven't even been realized yet, with a revenue to support it, is the budget that we presented to all of you and you approved. So I think the productive dialogue, because this impacts people sitting here and this impacts our students, is what are your recommendations to cut $882,000? And as you give the UCOA code and or the buckets, the ask is that we can share with you why that number was budgeted. And Brendan, I hear what you're saying for what was the amount for diagnostics. We certainly will look at that and probably reduce that. I don't know what that exact number is, but Ann will pull it up. But the increase in that are 2 nurses that cannot be.
Understood that there's some positions that, they're required. I think the ask there is that if there are other similar line items in there, which include a little bit of conservatism over what might come to happen, we should take a second look at those for next year and just get them as close to the actual number from this year as we can. And I am not in the weeds of the budget on a day-to-day basis, so I do defer to the professionals for that, but anywhere we can do that, I think it would be an appropriate activity for this year before we start,
So you're saying we're not cutting, you just want to match?
Correct.
Actuals.
And were it to go over next year, then I think it's a very healthy conversation to have in next year's budget conversation. And it's an appropriate use of fund balance were it to exceed what our projected expense was. I mean, I'm curious, like, I get it, we're hearing a lot of the same voices. It would be, it's a team here, let's hear everyone chime in a little bit.
Sorry if I missed it. If anybody had a question, I'm sorry. Working on something.
Just a couple of quick questions. The first thing, Renee, when it comes to any, I can't think of the word. Like with world language, I started like curriculum. That's the word I was looking for. Is there any curriculum that, again, it's probably pennies, like 15,000 here or there, but at least, is there anything that we can scale back on curriculum or push it out towards the?
Contract for our math, ELA, and social studies curriculum.
Okay. And then the other question that I have is actually going to be on page 26, and it's going to be the second line down. And again, just for clarification purposes, under, the transportation contractors, I see that it's been increased from, we budgeted 120 and proposed is 220,000 with an increase of 100,000. Is there any way to just take that out and then use, or what is that line item?
That line item is for our bus for our CTE students, our bus keepers.
Okay. Can we explain why it was increased by 100,000, or can we possibly either, offset that cost with like fund balance later? Do you know what I mean? Like in terms of like that one time or whatever, but I'm just thinking like from 120 to 220,000, and we've only done, what, 20,500 according to this?
It's just because the bill hasn't come in.
Okay, so that's what,
It's just the timing of that. And we have the same situation in Gloucester where you hear, oh, those bills haven't come in yet, and then they start to come in third and fourth quarter. That's where we are now. So
Okay.
that is a contractual agreement. That won't be less than what we budgeted. But there's an extra bus that was added for our CTE students.
okay, but don't we also have the CTE vans? Can we offset some of those costs with that, or no? Because I thought we had vans purchased sort of like for athletics, or that was part of the categorical funds that we paid for.
No, that's different.
That's different, okay. Thank you.
May I ask a question? Why is it different? Why can't they be used for other uses?
Because we can't transport, we can't bring kids to school in a CTE van. It has to be a school bus. This is a school bus that brings kids to school. The vans were purchased for kids to do work-based learning, and we use some of those for athletics.
I think we just need to be careful if we're making recommendations that if we cut, but the expenses come in, that we can offset it with fund balance. I mean, we can't be financially responsible in one way and then say, well, but then if we still spend the money, we'll use fund balance. Like, that's just as irresponsible. And in the same way, Shelley, that you always argue the 400,000 going in the budget, if we're gonna cut the expenses, then just cut them. Like, don't say that we're gonna use them to offset fund balance, because then next year, where's that money coming from? So if anything, like if someone's suggesting cuts, then suggest the cuts. Not, well, if the money is spent, well, then we'll use fund balance because we have it.
So-
No.
I think you're right to a point. I think that the cuts we're making would be to what we're actually spending this year. And I think we're in a unique situation next year, and that we know we're going to get more revenue than what we're showing, right? We know that we're going to be getting additional money that will now just go into fund balance because we're cutting the budget.
No, if we do that, the state can take the aid.
He means CTE.
CTE funding, we can't just realize what we're actually expecting next year and correct this situation. Or if we can, let's do that.
That actually raises a good question.
Right now, as currently budgeted, how many students do we forecast being here next year for CTE?
Budget 278. On the slide was 278.
Right, and what did we include in our actual budget?
232. According to calculations.
But you're,
If you use the number that you provided on the screen, approximate of the 19,000,
the number we provided was an average just to share with everyone how CTE is a good revenue source for us. We currently have about 37 students on a wait list that we could bring in,
Correct.
which would be additional tuition. But if you reduce the teachers, we don't have the space in English and math and social studies classes, even though we have the space in CTE. So this is a.
I totally get the tail wagging the dog a little bit with that, and it's frustrating. I guess the point I'm trying to make to what Mark was getting at is, no, it is not a best practice. And I wouldn't suggest that we go below certainly what we're spending this year. But I do think it's okay for us to get close to the number that we're spending this year, to take out some of the conservatism, if it's there, knowing that we likely will have a little bit more revenue than what we're showing here, hopefully.
You should probably get it.
My only concern, jeez, is what you're saying is what we were criticized for the 400,000, creating a structural deficit. We never had an intention of using that 400,000, although certainly got beat up for it. But now you're suggesting that we create a
To
structural
be
deficit.
clear, I'm not suggesting we create a structural deficit at all. I'm
If you
saying that we
use
recognize,
fund
I'm saying we recognize what we're spending this year as our budget number for next year, knowing that in the event it does go over, we do have money to draw upon, and we adjust the budget for the following year. I am not saying that we spend or budget for less than what we're actually spending this year. And if there's any other items that are similar to it, I think we should take a look at that before we're cutting teachers. Candidly, I mean,
So you're saying fund exactly what we plan on funding, just put different numbers?
No.
No. As it
You're
was
literally saying.
No,
No.
as was described.
Spend it if we go
No.
over.
As was described for diagnostics, it sounded like the description given that I heard was that we're budgeting for more next year than what we were spending this year. What I'm saying is we budget what we spent this year for diagnostics for next year.
But she explained that
She explained that there were nurses and other items too, which were separate items than diagnostics, as I understood it.
Yeah, and the diagnostic, I think was, you just pulled it up.
It could be like 10,000, I don't even know.
2030, right, I absolutely
Yeah.
get what you're saying, and that's certainly a place that we can look. I think the question is, okay, then what else? And I know that you have a comment, and I certainly don't want to take your time, but I think one of the parts that we have to remember is, as Beth said, that 400,000 was, and I put this slide back up, is because the budget is created in January, February, and March, and what has happened in the past is the revenue has been higher because either state aid and or tuition. So that 400,000 has not been used in my time here and or Dr. Barnes in the past. So now, if we have our tuitioned in students coming in and we have more, we are going to get even a larger revenue, and you're cutting expenses by $880,000. And that, as we sit here and say 20,000 here and 10,000 here, even if you cut your 20 and your 10, $882,000 is a lot of money in an already slim budget. You are going to have to inevitably impact teachers, which I don't recommend, because it's not going to have a good impact on students. So whatever suggestions come up, yes, we will continue to look at those, and that's a reduction. But you can't circle away from personnel when you make a recommendation to cut $880,000 from a budget when you already have a revenue source or revenue anticipated to cover.
So to be clear, I did not recommend cutting that.
No,
I want to be completely on the table. We are where we are though. And the way I'm looking at it is we should get that number as small as possible. And were I to be in your seat, and you might have already done this, I would take that number, say it's 400,000, whatever we're able to get to. That's optimistic, probably naively so. And we divide that up to each department, each program, and say it's 2%, right? How would you cut your budget by 2%? And ask the folks who are managing the minutia of those individual departmental budgets if they can find 2%.
And this dialogue is critical and important, and I love what you're saying because it's the exact process we follow. When we made the budget,
Correct.
we closed the first one.
Correct.
And the budget subcommittee said, no, go back, we want 0. And we went back to the department members and said, cut again. So I hear what you're saying because it's the right process.
And they now know that, the alternative that's currently being reviewed, that's on the table is staffing, right? That's the quick path, and maybe it's what has to be done. But I think it should only be done after we've exhausted all other opportunities. And if we break it into those smaller pieces and hand it to the people who actually really see it in practice, and be like, all right, maybe I don't spend $10,000 on, sheep's eyes for biology or whatever it might be. Maybe we can do, share eyes between the kids. And, I'm being facetious to some extent, but those little $2,000 savings here and there, they do add up, and perhaps that is a position that can be saved in aggregate. That's my take.
So with the proposed layoffs, how much of the $880,000 is covered, and how much do we still have to cut? Or do the layoffs cover everything?
So with the layoffs, when we did the projection, I'll let Ann speak. Don't forget that we got the additional 150 expenditure in that.
Right, so with the layoffs that we had proposed, it was 491,000, right? Then we had to add in 155,000 back for the benefits. So we're at 355.
We're shy, 355?
No.
That's what we cut.
That's what you cut.
Oh, that's
I'm
all
sorry,
I thought.
335,000.
Yes.
Yep. We do need to add in, though, expense for unemployment, because we need to increase that, because what we have in there currently will not be enough.
Do I need that? Okay.
Probably not.
I just have a couple of questions. So, Dr. Palazzo, could you just say this
So the CTE revenue that is already coming to us?
Yeah,
Or
the money, the revenue that you were predicting would cover that amount. That, what made this 0% local
State aid and
appropriation.
So the CT revenue that we're already getting in, we would continue to get in and put towards our programs. I don't know what would happen if we reduce it by $880,000, and I don't know what that percentage would look like for our revenue with CTE and state aid. You're required to spend your tuition on programs.
So Cindy, you said something about the money would have to go back to the state?
No, so if the state gives you the money to spend on
state money.
educational programs.
Right.
And we don't spend it, it's not like we can give it back to the taxpayers. I can't take state aid, say, oh, you know, I love I don't wanna spend any more on my taxes, let me, it doesn't go from one pocket to another.
So even if we can go line by line and we can find these cuts, we are in a position where we could lose money, state aid, that we cannot spend. That is fiscally irresponsible, and I know that's not what you meant, Shelley, when you made this motion. I know that's not what you meant. I know what you're trying to do, and I totally respect it. And I think this conversation would be great for a budget committee for next year, honestly. We've got teachers on the, I know how frustrating this has been, and I will be right there with you because I'm a taxpayer. But I don't wanna put us in a fiscally irresponsible position just because we're trying to cut 10 here and 20 here and then go back to the department heads and stress out the culture of the school and everyone in it to make a 2% cut across departments for a motion that wasn't intended to work this way. That's, I just, that feels fiscally irresponsible to me, personally. I don't wanna give money back to the state. I don't wanna lose money, right? I don't wanna use the fund balance the way you said, Brendan. I just, and I know you don't either. I know you said that. I know you said it's just for right now, because we're in a pitfall.
So the intent is
Right.
not to use fund balance, it's exactly what we're doing now, except
I know.
cutting it closer to where we're actually spending it.
You said it wasn't an ideal way to budget.
No, it's, the money is there were we to go over budget. I mean, it's no different than this year, right? Like,
You said it wasn't an ideal way to budget.
let me give you, so in Foster, we had an extra student that we had to tuition out that was unexpected.
Right.
We had to use fund balance for that for
Yeah.
this year to cover it.
Yep.
Actually, I don't even think we had to, but
We are
it,
next
it
year.
was available to, and you account for it as best you can. These
And
things come up.
You account for it as best you can.
Correct.
We try not to. We totally get it. I hear it. So I just wanted to say out loud that we could lose money in this situation. We already had a 0% local appropriation increase. 0%. This is an amazing feat. And it's all of you, the whole committee, Shelley include all of you, are the reason we have that. Because you made administration go back 2 more times to get to 0%. But it's not exactly where you want to be, and I hear that, of like, is this the way to do it? And we do have some issues, like legal issues, that we don't have answers to yet on the MOU. We just don't have those answers. And if you guys make a decision right now before you have those answers, you might end up in court. And you don't want that either. So, that's all I'm saying. Thank you, Jennifer. Yeah.
Turn one off, it can run down.
Oh, you,
Only put one on, if they're that close.
can you go ahead?
So,
Are you going?
the thing is, and I appreciate everything you just, what's your first name? Jennifer. But this is where we are. The vote was taken. We have to respect it. We have no choice.
That's not, and honestly, it's not true. You have a couple of options because of the legal implications of this motion that you don't know yet. You don't have all the information. And I just
Right.
respectfully, you do not have to. You are not obligated to enact this. It could be void. You could amend. You could wait to get your legal, to actually get a legal opinion.
we do need to hand out layoff notices by June.
You actually don't?
Well, if the ruling goes against us, they have to be notified by that day. We can always recall them.
I mean, if you want to grab all the information.
Well,
I hear you, I know you feel obligated.
it's state law. It's not, I feel obligated. We have to notify our teachers.
Shelley, how did you come up with that number? That might help me to understand where you could foresee these cuts coming from, because you had a very specific number in mind.
Because that was a true level budget. Nope, it was a true level budget from last year. That's what it was. That was a true level budget.
So you didn't look to see.
Oh, I did, and,
Wait, let me finish. You
yes.
didn't look to see if we had to hire 2 more nurses, or if we had to, if healthcare had gone up. Like, you didn't look to see any of that. You just said, this is what our bills were, and this is how much we had coming in.
Well, I went through budget to actuals, from like the audited actual and the budget. For instance, I know you said you did a 0% increase, took a lot. However, we did not accurately account for state aid accurately last year. Last year, we budgeted 5.3. Let's just round it up to 5.3 million. When in all truth of it, we got in over 6 million, which
Right,
was a
but that
700,
wasn't-
hold on,
yeah.
which was $714,000 difference.
Right, but you can't
Even
say it
though-
wasn't accurately budgeted, because when we make the budget recommendation, it comes out with the recommendation in January, and last year we were asked to go below what the recommended was. That's why you had that 400,000. So state aid was estimated lower last year, and then it came in not only where it was the year before, but higher. No one had expected that. But this subcommittee had asked us to go a little bit lower in state aid.
Okay, because I'm just going by, I looked up
I'm
the
just giving you
Foster.
the, I
No, no, that's-
understand, but
I
I'm giving
respect
you
that.
the explanation, because it's not a good place when someone says, you're not accurately representing. We are accurately representing with the information we have and the ask of the subcommittee. So I am going to clarify those things, because it's important for people to understand that we are in no way inaccurately representing.
However, I
information.
watched the Foster Town Council meeting from 2025, and where Kelly Russ, who is our financial manager, asked you why you were not accurately representing the tuition, the state aid. So that's why I'm using those words. And you said, because I was asked to go lower.
Which is exactly what I just said.
I know, because you were saying that's what the budget subcommittee, not the state aid. The state aid number didn't change. That's all I'm trying to say. And if you go by the May numbers, I just want to accurately, again, represent. Tuition revenue was budgeted for the 25-26 year. In our April revenue report that we received as school committee members, it was 4.2 million. To date, we have received over 5 million. And this is where my frustration lies. We're passing those burdens on to the taxpayers. So I know you don't see it that way, but that's how it's seen. That is how it's perceived. Because if you need,
How so?
Start that again.
all right, because if you need $13 million to run the school, and you have $5 million coming in from tuition students, and we kind of know that, because if we're budgeting 273, then that means I have a lot of notes here, I'm sorry. And that means we're getting about 68 per year. So that means 68 are in freshman, sophomore, junior. 68 are going out, 68 will be coming in. Renee said she has a waiting list. So with that being said, if you know you need 13 million, and 5 million is coming in from CTE students, but yet we're taxing, that $1 million difference is going on to the local appropriations. That's going to the local taxpayers.
Shelley, this year's budget was created with 0% local appropriations. 0%. Zero. You can't go lower than 0. There is no
Actually, you
increase.
can. We did it, and I pulled it up. I pulled up the year we did.
Wait, I would like to finish, because here's where this conversation needs to be a dialogue moving forward. The reason for this meeting was because there's a motion that was made to cut expenditures by $882,000, $853. That you made that motion, it was made by you. So I'm asked to make reductions. So at this point, this committee is going to have to say, are we making the reductions? And if so, I will ask you, Shelley, because you had a list, let's take the time to go through your list.
Can I ask 25-26, and where we are year-to-date.
So you want to use actuals from 2 years ago
no.
to compare?
Well, this is what we're doing in here, is 25.
No, I'm saying you
last
want,
year's
but you're
budget.
saying audited.
But I want to use what was actually spent last year, where we are year-to-date.
I don't know. Shelley,
What?
to what end? Because there's 0%. You can't reduce MOE. You really don't know about this homeschool thing yet. There's zero benefit to the taxpayers right now, so to what end?
Because Jennifer, because it was approved by the taxpayers.
No,
It was,
okay, that's a whole other issue that you're also gonna have to deal with legally. So, Shelley, to
How?
what end? Why?
Why?
Are we
The
pushing
question's
this?
why,
because if we're
Shelley.
spending money that we don't need, it's raining in the budget. That's why. That's why I want to look at what we've spent year-to-date.
But people don't understand that there's no tax benefit to that, what you're
Doesn't
talking
matter
about.
if there's a tax, that's not what it's about.
Are you
Jennifer.
acknowledging that there's no tax benefit? Because you keep saying I'm concerned about the
Well,
taxpayer.
no,
Do
not
you
currently, but there
understand?
will be in
No,
the
but
future.
do you understand that?
Currently, there is no, but in the
Okay.
past down, because when you have a budget, then those are your reoccurring costs. And that comes down, this is what our budget is, this is what we spend, this is what we spend on money. That therefore, if we get a reduction in CTE students or something else, that burden falls onto the taxpayers. So yes, it ultimately does fall in the lap of the taxpayers. All I am asking for is a year-to-date, where we are year-to-date for 25-26. What was budgeted? 26-27. I think it's important for the whole school committee to see where we're at financially, what the bucket of money. It was very enlightening to me to see that we have almost $800,000 that is extra from CTE, and it's only May. That was actually April's numbers.
Well, when we cut all the teachers in the programs,
Cindy,
and our
this is
students
talking
have
about
to go to
facts.
other schools because we're cutting our
Cindy,
programs.
a bit dramatic here.
I'm not being
Yes,
dramatic,
you are
Shelley.
being
You
dramatic.
just throw random numbers up in front of a
This
huge
isn't random.
audience.
This was the budget report.
Nope.
This was the budget.
You
The
throw
CTE revenue is budget.
You can't back up your statement with any numbers. You came up with an arbitrary number, you threw it out to a bunch of people who didn't quite understand, they voted it down, and now you can't tell us where that money should come from.
I'm trying. Then let's have
We're
real
waiting.
numbers. Let's have real numbers. How hard is that? Why is that not? Is there anybody else in the school committee that agrees that we should have the ledger and see where we are year to date?
You have real numbers. The reality is, as people are sitting here, you're not going to reduce $882,000
You don't know that.
with.
I'm saying,
okay.
let's cut this here. Renee, when I took office in 2010, we had to cut $180,000 from a little school budget. We did it. We did it in 6 months. We didn't have a choice. You can do it. I'm sorry.
But we do have a choice because we have the revenue to cover our expenses.
You don't have it. Why are you gonna? How are you gonna get the money back, Cindy? There was a motion and there was a vote.
No, what she's saying is the revenue is coming in. You cut
Yes.
anticipated expense. Shelley, please let me finish. You cut anticipated expenses. If you choose to truly level fund, which was the question, where did you get that number from? If you choose to truly level fund, and Ann just said there's one line item where we have 2 additional nurses coming in, then that line cannot be level funded. So to truly level fund, you will force this district into a deficit, which will then have to report it to the Auditor General for a corrective action plan, and we say, we're going to be in a deficit, but we have revenue to cover, and we can't use that revenue. So I go back again, that we will get you the information you need.
Thank you.
Not tomorrow. No, don't thank me yet, Shelley, because it's not tomorrow. But the reality is you made a motion to cut the expenses by $882,000, and as Jen said, I don't think that was your intended purpose, because what you're going to do is you're going to reduce faculty and staff, and even if you cut here, you're cutting programs, and your statement was this will not cut any educational programs. It will.
Yes, I've been listening to some of the things you've been talking about. And the last thing you were talking about, you said everyone has contracts, so you can't cut them. Well, unfortunately, you renewed everybody's contract before budget season. I don't, well, that was my observation. The CTE busing,
Can I just clarify that, because I don't just want it to be a no? That if you cut their contracts right now,
I'm not talking about cutting anybody's
No,
contract.
What I want to clarify what you just said, Walt, because Shelley suggested cut the position, and you said that I extended. We extended, but people are under contracts until next year, 27. So there would not be an impact to this budget because they are under contractual obligations. So that's not an option to cut a position in that office because you
No.
signed a contract for FY 2027.
All I'm saying is, I think it would have been better to wait until after budget season. You know, everybody had contracts for this year already, it's okay. I'm not saying cut anybody, I'm just saying, in case you had to cut somebody, I don't think it's a great idea of renewing all the contracts before you have a budget passed. I think Aaron brought up the CTE buses. When we first started the program, we didn't have any of these. And then Dr. Bond started, first it started at 50, it was 100. Now, I don't know, is it a couple $100,000 now that we spend sending buses out to pick these people up? Okay, yeah. All right, well, that's, you know, when we first started our program, we didn't do that. And it seems we got 30-some people on a waiting list. Is that a big deterrent to people coming here? All right, I can see transportation may be a problem, but maybe that's someplace we could cut back a little bit. And Northwest Special Ed, do they still rent space from us in the middle school for that program?
So Northwest Special Ed will dissolve after this year, but yes, there's a
And do we get a break on our membership, of the money we have to pay for that? Okay, so we still get that. Oh, we still will.
Not next year. Next year, we have some employees, and the employees who are no longer ours will not be in that building any longer.
Where will they be?
They'll be in Situate.
Okay. So will Situate get a break?
It won't affect us because it's early childhood, so it doesn't.
Oh, all right. And then back to the counting of homeschoolers. It was never done under the previous administration. Now, whether you're going to do it or not, I think before you go and change a formula that's been used for years, and recently has cost the town of Gloucester hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you're doing it a different way, I think you should approach the two towns and let them know that you're changing the way that you do the proration. Well, the previous administration never counted homeschoolers. Well, I'm pretty sure,
You're pretty sure or you know, Walt? Are you pretty sure or do you know for a fact that they didn't count it?
I was told by the person who did it.
Who's the
Yes.
person who did it?
I'm not going to mention names.
Okay, then that's not helpful.
Okay, so
Superintendents and business managers
Didn't count it in what?
in the proration count. We didn't add those students in.
what does that mean, proration account?
That's,
Well, because I'm looking at a submission report that was just given to me by the person who submits it to RIDE. And the report requires you to identify enrolled in outplacement program, enrolled in GED program, enrolled in regular public school, homeschooled, privately enrolled with IEP or service plan, and enrolled in a transition plan. You are required by RIDE to report those enrollments. So can we just end this conversation now?
you can end it, Greg, anytime you want, but I think the towns will be very interested if Gloucester is spending $300,000 or $400,000 a year more, and the proration has been changed.
Okay, good luck with that.
But, so I think to what Walt's saying is that we do need to be open with our communication with both towns, let them know why we're doing what we're doing and what the logic is, and approach them as partners, not as this combative relationship that seems to be propagating, because it gets us nowhere.
In our charter, Greg, you're good at reading the charter.
Whether the legal interpretation is correct or not, it's just,
But with all due respect, if the town wants to change the way to interpret maintenance of effort, the burden is on the town by the statute to identify what the declining enrollment is. They have just as much access to these public documents as we do. They could have asked us, can you give us an analysis of your enrollment, what you reported last year to RIDE, and what you reported this year to RIDE, and how you reported that. They could have asked us all those questions. They have not. They haven't done it before the budget was passed. The $154,000 was identified for a water bond. It was not identified for declining enrollment. If the towns want to come to you and claim that they can reduce their maintenance of effort by a declining enrollment, they have certain steps that they have to take that they have not taken. They can't have Walt come here and say he talked to somebody who said, maybe we didn't report it to somebody. That's not helpful. And that's not the way it's going to be done. And it's not disrespectful to the towns or a lack of cooperation to expect that if they want to suddenly cut us for say they can cut $300,000 in maintenance of effort because of declining enrollment, the burden is on them to come to us and make that argument and present the evidence for that.
I guess that's where we would just agree to disagree. That I mean, we very much, we're hearing from our town councilors individually, we're hearing from them when we meet as local school committees, meeting with them, that they're looking for partners up on this table because we are a big piece of their budget. We're hearing that they would like us to extend the courtesy of communicating openly with them. And that's what I'm suggesting. We look to them to help support us. Likewise, we should support them where they need to be met too. And I think there's zero harm in having open conversation with them. I would tell you that there's a lot of risk in following the approach that you've suggested, whether it's legally correct or not. And I'm assuming it is. I'm no lawyer.
I don't understand. You're saying that the committee should have approached the towns before the budget was enacted and say, we might have declining enrollment. Do you want to talk about it? Is that what you're suggesting, that the committee should have done that before they submitted their budget to the public to vote on?
I'm suggesting as we meet with them and they do their own budgetary reviews, we'll be honest with them what we're forecasting for enrollment and let them know what we think that could do for their contributions, how it might impact it, so that they can weigh in and they at least hear those words said.
Can I just clarify?
Yeah.
Because I agree with you, and I will say, sitting up here, and I don't want to speak for Ann, but I'm going to, Ann and I work very well with both Beth and Kelly at the town level. So I don't want there to be any misunderstanding that when the proration numbers are given, they're given early as soon as we get them and both receive them, and there's never been any questions. We did not change the calculation from the way the budget was given to me. Now, the first year in, if you remember, we had 2 business managers, one of whom had previous experience in Gloucester, and Gloucester has had 4 business managers. So perhaps it was some districts do it one way and some districts do it another way, but the consistency, since we've been creating the budget from FY23, my first budget, has been the same. And we work very well with both Beth Beltram at Gloucester and Kelly Russ at Foster, so I don't want that to be anything out there that it's not. What I'm hearing is that you had a conversation with perhaps Dr. Barnes or Bridget Allman, and they said they didn't do it in the past. Based on last Thursday's conversation, Shelley, I think you said, find out the last 5 years. We were not able to get our hands on the information because it's not in the business office, but we are seeking to get that to see when it changed. That's the best they can do, but our relationships with the business manager for both towns is good.
But the proration...
It should seem pretty simple.
The proration has nothing to do with maintenance of effort.
That's true, yeah.
The numbers that are reported to the towns, whether your population is increasing and decreasing, is based upon the charter. That is not what's in 16.723. They're 2 completely separate concepts. So to ask the prior superintendent, did you include homeschooling in the proration? Of course he's going to say no. But that doesn't have anything to do with the maintenance of effort language. And so we're talking in circles here.
No, Greg.
We're talking in circles. That makes no sense.
I don't think you understand what we're talking about, Greg. The proration is a whole different thing. It doesn't have anything to do with the budget. The only thing it has to do with the budget is how much each town's going to pay. It has nothing to do with reduce population. I think you're misunderstanding two things.
Can I ask a question about something, Walt, if you don't mind, please? You can stand there. I just had a quick question. So according to state law, you have to budget 3% of your overall your overall local appropriations, correct? For capital projects, is 3% of the local appropriations? For capital projects, is that the state law? Greg, is it 3%? So according to the state law of 3%, 3% of the 18 million, all right, so our total, the local appropriations is 18,058,000. So according to that, the 3%, well, you can stand there. You might want to jump in on this. Just tell, so 3% of the local appropriations is $541,741. With that being said, why are we budgeting, hold on, I just had it, I'm sorry. Well, why are we budgeting, yeah, because why are we budgeting, why are we charging the tax?
3%'s the minimum.
But that's what state law, so if I'd rather save a teacher than budget more than we have to. So this is an example of fund balance. If an emergency occurs, so we are budgeting in capital improvements, I just flippin' had it. It's a 5% increase. I'm like losing my mind. All right, budgeted actual, 986,000. I am on page, sorry, I can't say it, page 6. So we're budgeting 986,000. All right, that's a $302,000 increase. And with that being said, the state requirement of 3%, that's the school committee's decision. Capital improvements. No, the state requirement 3% of your operating budget is for what? Capital projects. Maintenance. Improvements. So, all right, so, okay. So can we reduce in a capital improvements project plan? Can we reduce any of that if it's not, if there's an emergency that happens? I'm sorry, what? Yes, yes. Can we reduce some of that? Like I said, I'd rather reduce that than reduce a teacher, because that's beyond our legal requirement, one. Hold on, Renee, you asked me to let you finish? So let me finish. Okay, so, all right, so where is that, that's. Clarify that. This again is the law, I said at the beginning, that dictates our budgets. Yes. So that's fine. I'm just saying, I'm not trying to go below it. All I'm trying to say is, why can't we cut that? This is a prime example of that. If an emergency happens, that is why you have fund balance. It's a one-time expenditure, an emergency happens, you fix it. We don't need to budget more than we need to.
We're not in an emergency.
I'm sorry, what? No, but if we don't, we shouldn't be charging the taxpayers for more than we have to. This is a prime example. So again, this is like, I'm trying to give suggestions, and it's no, can't do that. No, can't do that. So I'm trying to have a productive conversation, and you guys are all making it impossible.
That's what I'm assuming, is page 11 down at the bottom of page 11 under capital improvement projects, under expenses.
I understand, but we have some projects, even the capital projects team just approved at our last meeting, that's going to the full committee. So I just want to be mindful of the projects that are up and coming and recommended. Yeah.
But they weren't approved yet by the school committee, and all I'm saying is that
It's a great suggestion, Shelley.
it's
Let Brendan represent.
684,000, which increased 300,000. We keep increasing it 300,000 every year. This seems to be historical over the 24-25 budget, 25-26 budget, now the 26-27 budget. And I'm just trying to say, that seems a bit excessive.
Wait, what, we're increasing what every year?
Where are you?
300,000.
For capital.
Page 11 under 24-25 budget.
Aaron, do you see it?
Yeah, I see it under page 11, under the 24-25 budget. We budgeted 380,000. 25-26, 684,400. And then capital improvements under the 26-27 general fund, I'm seeing the 986,636.
The 300,000
But three-
comes from the
hold on.
towns.
Get reimbursement from the state. So when we spend a project, what is that reimbursement rate? 37%, 38, I think
It's over.
so it depends on the project. So we get back approximately a little
But how much
over
goes from the
30%.
town? And then we also take tuition for that.
So that's why.
Yeah. So can Ann respond to that? Because there's some
We get
clarification.
300,000 from, $1,000 is the, what we set aside for tuition revenue, percentage of our tuition revenue we put towards capital. It's 300,000 that we get from the towns. It hasn't increased. Where are you seeing that it's increased?
She's down
Or-
here. She's looking down here, capital improvement projects. She's looking.
Okay, that's an estimate of what our capital improvement projects are going to cost, but the 300 is what we ask for the towns.
Okay, so where is that? I don't see that. What page is
It's,
that?
well, it's on page 11. You can see where it says, local appropriation, under capital, 300.
Same column, just go all the way up.
It's
So that
on,
nine-
it's
that
another
nine-
page too, you can
But
see
that
it.
986 you're speaking about? I wish I could put it up there for you all.
If you see on page 14, where it shows the 25-26 budget, the 26-27, the second line, capital improvements, 300,000, that didn't increase.
So a couple quick thoughts on that. One is it's important just to hear the word said out loud. Everyone interprets all of our buildings here to be the brand new middle school, this and that. There will be increasing capital costs on that building and this building in perpetuity. It's, you know, if I drive a car for 30 years, there's more costs, replacement parts, things start to go. That is what it is. So I think it's appropriate for us to plan looking forward to increase our capital expenditures year over year. I think that the values you have in there reflect what we anticipated for next year's capital costs, and they were appropriate when we budgeted. Having said all of that, and in the spirit of what I said at the beginning, which is what each of these departments should take a look and see if there's any opportunity for savings, we should do that if it means we might be able to preserve some staff and programs. And I think that's an appropriate exercise for us to undertake, either as a facilities department or as a capital projects committee, to make sure that what we have there is as close in line with what we anticipate spending as it can possibly be.
Just to clarify, yes, you're correct. We'll go back and agree with having departments look. But Ann made an important point that I think might have been glossed over. So if you have your budgets in front of you on page 11, if you look at the capital improvements, this is an important one, Shelley, the capital improvements column, the amount of revenue coming in for capital improvements, 594,000 approximately, is coming in from state aid. It's coming in because of projects that we completed. We are entitled to the reimbursement. 91,000 is part of our tuition revenue, the practice of this committee. You've always put a portion of that towards capital improvements. The 300,000 is already tied into your local appropriations that I will remind you once again, your local appropriations is a 0% increase. So you cannot decrease that. It's already tied into your local appropriations, and that has not changed when you say the actual of what we were year to year. The 300,000 comes from the towns. So I just wanted to clarify that the revenue coming in totaling 986 is because we expect 986, but that revenue comes in from different sources that would not add to this 882 expected expenditure cut.
Can we please get, can the committee please get actual numbers year-to-date? We already said yes. Okay, so then that's, I think, I look forward to a conversation once we receive that information. So do you have other suggestions to cut the $882,000? I think it would be ignorant for me to say at this time until I have the actual, because I have tried and you've corrected me on things and I respect that. So with that being said, I think it is important for all of us to look at that paperwork, because if in fact, we are still waiting, if you can count homeschools. If you cannot count homeschool students, there's a problem, and we're gonna have to make cuts next year. So I think we should look, all of us, on what we spend, how much is cushion or anything else. I agree, but you have time right now. But I don't have information in front of me, Renee. I am not gonna make arbitrary. You made a motion for $882,000 expenditure, and my ask as a superintendent is, where is it coming from? Where's it coming from? Renee, I'm trying, and I've asked for this information for 2 weeks now. You asked for it Wednesday. No, I did not. I asked for it prior to the meeting, and I didn't get it. You said you couldn't give it to me because it was confidential. I asked for it prior. Well, no, she just got snippy with me. I asked for it prior to Wednesday, prior to the school committee meeting on Thursday. You said I could not receive it.
What you asked for, though, was the general journal entry detail. You didn't ask for updated budget numbers.
I asked for a general.
Or updated,
My email was the general ledger. I'm trying to upload it up right now.
So I get the sense that we're sort of repeating ourselves here collectively, and I'm not sure that that's the best path forward.
Jennifer.
Yeah.
Okay, hi, ooh. I don't need that, do I? Okay. Shelley,
Yes.
I would like to see the budget numbers as well. I think that would be an excellent exercise. However, I think the request is, what was your basis to make the cut and the motion in the first place after the budget had already passed committee, right? I think that's what this team of people and everyone else who's confused is asking. And if you don't have that information, that's okay. But why are you going to fight over this back and forth right now? Because I think that's what.
So I did say the budgeted actuals for the professional services, which was the 53,000 new COLA line, which is 53,000.
No,
No, so you're asking me where my, so as far as the
No, when you made
882,000.
the motion.
I know, so I'm explaining, Jennifer, may I
Yeah.
please explain that to you, please, if
Okay.
you don't mind? So when I made the motion, it was because the 53,000 new COLA line
Yes.
was a $400,000 difference between the audited actual
Okay.
and what, we were not given an explanation why, when it was questioned. So that was a $400,000 difference. So that is a significant number, and that's where part of it came from.
Okay.
And then those other numbers that came in that were increases, that didn't make sense to me, and I did not get backup information. But we did, and that was brought up at the meeting, the 53,000 in COLA line, that we've never spent more than 633,000. Why are we budgeting almost 1.1 million?
But Shelley, as part of the budget subcommittee, why wasn't this brought to the attention of the subcommittee before the vote? Because it seems like,
I'm sorry, Eileen, I didn't interrupt you.
go ahead.
I did bring it up the night of the budget. I could
The
not
night of the
attend-
budget, but we already had our preparation meetings, and everyone worked on the budget before the night of the meeting, before the
We had
motion.
According to the SOS website, Secretary of State website, there was one meeting.
How many meetings did we have? Two.
Well, there's only one posted that I saw, so I'm sorry, that's all I saw. But I could not attend the meeting because they were earlier. I worked.
Everyone worked, Shelley.
We're kind of going
Okay,
back and
sorry.
forth, and I just do want to reiterate
So-
that earlier, when Cindy asked you where that number came from, your response wasn't that you thought it was a 53,000 line. What you said was you just level funded the budget. So the clarification is essential and important. What was in your mind to make a motion to reduce by $882,000 cut expenditures? If it was to truly level fund, that should have been a conversation happened before, because I just gave you one example of where one line has increased. So what is our move forward?
Our move forward now, since I did answer Jennifer, that was my motion that night, was based on the 53,000, reducing our spending. I believe that we're bloated.
So you, Shelley Pezza, who I've known a long time, is saying we should give money back to the state of Rhode Island that we're getting anyways. I just want to be clear, we should give money back to the state.
We don't know what's going back to the state. We gotta cut our expenditures so what,
We're getting the money anyways.
does it matter, but why spend, that's like saying, all right.
We can't keep it. The state's going to require us to give it back.
The state
We can't just
gives it
save the
to us
money.
To enhance our educational programs for our students.
But if our budget is bloated in any sense of the term, I do think it should be reduced.
So, Jen, if I might, I agree with what you're saying. I would rather not be in a position here where we're making cuts anywhere. I agree. I'm just more of a pragmatist, and I look at it like, we are where we are, let's just deal with it. So, but I just want to hear, what are you actually suggesting? That we don't do anything?
Well, there's probably three things you could do.
Yep.
You can void the motion and have a revote. You can amend the budget because you can. And you can, I mean, I guess you could just wait because of the teachers. You know, I heard the June 1st deadline.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll have to keep them and figure it out. So you could do nothing on that one. You really don't have to. So anyway, and I will let your lawyer advise you on those options. I am not a lawyer,
Yeah.
but I know you have those options. And the fact that this motion, Brendan, is problematic, you're not really, I don't know if that's sinking in like.
It definitely does. I feel like,
You're not obligated right now to act on it. You as a body have to decide what you do next with this information.
well, we do have the hard deadline that were it to be,
My students suffer because someone made in my opinion, gave bad advice and made an improper motion. We have an amazing school that kids are coming from as far as Westerly. A boy gets in a car and drives here from Westerly every single day because our programs are amazing, our buildings are gorgeous, our facilities are top-notch. He's making a sacrifice to drive here because it's exceptional. I'm not comfortable cutting state aid and tuition so that we can penalize our students' education. I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not. The only reason we're having this conversation is because of that June deadline. Not one of us up here is okay with letting these teachers go. They are the backbone of the programs that we run in this building, that the kids are enjoying, learning, going into trades, going to Ivy League schools, being recruited heavily by the unions. I'm not comfortable with it, and nobody up here is. I don't know how to justify this motion that was made. I don't.
yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, right? Like, we don't want to be cutting staff. We don't want to be harming programming.
At this time, we have the money.
I agree.
We have the income.
It's
we have the
frustrating.
revenue. It's inappropriate.
Thank you, Jen.
So, I'm not trying to tell you what to do, I'm just gonna make a suggestion based upon what I just heard and what I heard earlier. Sounds like the 882 cut was based upon a level funding to last year's budget. So perhaps you can simply cut your budget to be level funded to last year, knowingly creating yourself a deficit. But that's what the vote was, and you will have the revenue then to cover that deficit if in fact the expenditures exceed last year's or this year's budget. That seems to be what the purpose of the motion was. So if you want to effectuate the purpose of that 882 motion, that is what you would do.
Does that make sense?
I still want the information so we can look at it. That's whatever the committee wants to do.
please also consider the 154 cut, because the towns did cut you. They notified your business manager that they are not gonna pay that 154, so you have to make an additional, it's not just the 882, you have to consider what you're gonna do with that 154 cut. You are either gonna make those cuts as well, or you have to make some efforts to get that money back from the towns, one or the other.
Do we have any idea of when RIDE is gonna get back to us?
RIDE's not gonna give you an answer on the 154. They don't have jurisdiction over that, only the Superior Court does. Those are two separate issues.
I just want to clarify a statement I had made earlier. I didn't personally talk with the previous business manager, but I know someone who did. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thanks for the hearsay.
No, it's not hearsay, I actually have the text message right here.
Then start sending us all these things that you get on the side, Shelley.
So
Please,
you can have, it's
just
not on the side, because I do my
start
research.
sending us all these things. I thought you
wanna
didn't have,
see
you said the last meeting you didn't have time to text, now all of a sudden you have these text messages.
Oh, no, I don't have time to talk on the phone. I can text.
Okay.
I can't talk on the phone. It's right here, if you'd like to see it.
Shelley, the
Please.
last time you said you did your research, you came up with this plan.
Okay, so
Or
I'll
lack
text
of.
Mark, I'm gonna send this to you right now.
Thank
Just
you.
like I have your text message, by the way, from saying that of course we're gonna cost share the facilities directors and assistant facilities, because it's a no-brainer.
Okay,
to have
Shelley.
it. I'm just saying, I text, he knows I text him all the time. So Mark, I'm gonna send this to you right now.
Thank you.
I'll
Be
send it
sure,
over to
I'll
you.
look at it promptly.
But with that being said, can we have another meeting? 'Cause
Yes,
this is just-
she's in the process of picking a date. But
Okay,
what were you
perfect.
sending me?
I'm sending it to Mark,
Oh, what is it that you're sending to Mark?
the positions, and then homeschool requests.
How can we make a decision to
You're not gonna get it, because you're not gonna get anything by June 1st. But we shouldn't have to come to June. But we need to have, we're gonna have another meeting.
Okay, so if they're not getting back to us by June 1st, then we need to send out layoff notices. Nobody's happy
Got
about
you.
that, but we can always recall them.
What I heard was the basis of the motion, of the 882, and anybody can correct me if I misheard this, but what I thought I heard was the 882,000 was level funding your expenditures based on this year's current budget.
So I said I wanna have another meeting.
But is that the basis of your motion? Say what you just said.
Please repeat it.
And we can go to the videotape, I mean, that's what I heard.
Yes,
Based on last year's actuals.
Based on yes.
that was,
If that was the will of the voters and the intent of the voters, then your budget should be amended to reflect every line item is a 0% increase from last year. You will be knowingly creating a deficit, but that's what the voters voted on. And you will have the revenue when you have to make, when Ann comes to you and says you're,
So it's gonna appear that we're overspending, but the revenues come in to cover our
yeah,
expenses.
yeah.
How do we rectify
it's not me, I'm not up.
the positions that were added and the increases in healthcare expenses?
Shut that up and speak up.
So if we level fund the budget to last year's actuals, we added positions, and we had an increase in healthcare costs, right? So how do we cover those?
Well, because Greg is saying that the money's coming in anyway, so that'll pay for it.
You're-
Oh, so the structural debt.
You're purposely creating a structural deficit, but not a structure, I'm sorry. Let me correct, let me use,
You're getting the revenue.
let me use correct terms. You are purposely creating an anticipated deficit. So Ann will likely come to you in July and August, or at some point and say, your expenditures are exceeding what last year's budget was, and what this year's budget will be, next year's budget will be. Therefore, I make the recommendation that to cover that deficit, we get all this extra money Because nobody's talking about what happens to this extra $1 million in revenue that you have. So it's gonna be sitting in a surplus account, not all at once, obviously. So she's gonna be drawing off that $1 million to cover the deficit that you've intentionally created. That is bad, it might be illegal, but that is what the voters voted, is as I'm understanding it, that is what the voters voted.
Yeah, but that only causes more problems down the road.
It's just a suggestion, you don't have to follow it, I'm just trying to follow the logic of the 882 cut. If the logic of the 882 cut was to level fund the budget without considering contractual obligations, mandatory increases and all that, then the voters voted to purposely create a deficit. That was the intent of the vote.
But what you're creating is a structural deficit. Well, we've lived that in Gloucester.
Are we sure that we have it? Like RIDE won't recall it. So if RIDE does recall it, then it is a structural deficit, and there's no way to reconcile it.
I thank you for putting forward an idea. I think it's a lot to process, and I'd personally just like some time to chew on that one, especially the legal side of it, because I'm not sure that we're allowed to do that. But it's an idea.
May I ask a question, please? So isn't that kind of what we do now with unanticipated CTE revenue that we don't budget? Isn't that basically what we do now? Because we don't budget the full amount of the CTE revenue. So when it comes in, I'm sorry, Greg, what's that? Well, I don't know. We're knowingly budgeting 278. We willfully have on the enrollment 278, but we're budgeting 230 something. So to me, that's kind of knowingly doing it, because if we, on the screen said 278.
How many times have we said that 18,000 is not the exact number? You keep multiplying that number, and that's not the number.
No, Mark.
You keep using that average.
I'm using the low number. I'm using the low number. It doesn't matter. Well, right now, we got in $800,000, and it's only April when we got the revenue.
So I'm confused on your point.
No, so I'm trying to say, so Greg is saying you use the money's coming in. That's what Greg is saying, and I'm saying, isn't that what we're already doing with CTE revenue? That's what I'm asking you.
If you cut the expenditures, then we will have to reduce teachers, and extra CTE revenue will not come in because we will not have the teachers to teach them. The unanticipated or unexpected CTE revenue happens when the schedule is complete, and you can look at the seats you have available.
That's not what I'm saying, Renee. I'm sorry if you're misunderstanding, if I'm not clear. So Greg is saying the money's coming in anyway. So all I'm trying to say is the money that comes in from the CTE students that is unbudgeted, we spend it. It's because I've looked for the past 2 years. It's not going in fund balance. And if I said that before, I misspoke, and I apologize. We spend it. Even though we didn't budget it, it got spent somewhere. So with that being said, we didn't budget that additional money, but it's spent. So I'm saying, so it's basically what Greg is saying to do with the state.
No, we spend it or we use fund balance. Your budgets have been prepared with fund balance. When your CTE tuition comes in higher and/or your state aid, you do not have to use the fund balance.
But-
I didn't go back past FY19. I'm sure if I did, this would be the trend.
Yeah, we budgeted 150. What I'm trying to say, so we budgeted 400,000 fund balance. We didn't need it. But as of right now, there's $800,000 extra. And that was only in the April revenue.
That's the amount for the year. There's not gonna be any more. I know you say only April.
Okay, all right, so, all right. Then, all right, but it's still over 400,000, because we're not using the 400,000 fund balance. And that's still an extra 400,000, and that gets spent somewhere. So we're putting it somewhere. Because it didn't go in fund balance last year.
Putting it into educational programs. So when more kids come, you have more programs sometimes, Shelley. I just think we are going around and around and around and around, and we're complaining that we have additional revenue.
And I was reiterating what Greg said, that technically we're already practicing that. That's all I was saying.
So are you saying you're okay with practicing?
I agree with Brendan. I want time. I appreciate the suggestion. I truly appreciate the suggestion. I think it is definitely an approach, and I think I need more time to think about it, personally.
Do you want to schedule this another meeting? other districts are letting go many more. Getting jobs is going to be insanely difficult, so I don't want to drag any teacher along.
I don't wanna lay any of them off, so I agree, so
You
let's,
should have made the
let's
motion
find a
then.
date. Mark? Then we should have had a conversation at the April 7th meeting, do you wanna go there?
You should have attended the budget subcommittee meetings, because you're on the budget subcommittee.
Mark?
You should have attended them.
Conversation outside, and we should have had it at a time when
So
everybody
I
can go.
do feel like we've had this conversation a couple times tonight. Can we just chat about what the next steps might be?
Let's choose a meeting date, please. Mark, we can have a conversation outside, Mark.
Sure.
The date that we talked about last, at the last meeting was May 20th. It looked like everyone pretty much could attend that, May 20th at 6 PM.
Can we do it earlier, please?
It's fine with me.
What day?
Later.
What day?
I have Wednesday, the 20th. You guys, we can look at another date, but that's the date I had down.
I can do the 20th.
Can we go back to the 19th, the Tuesday, the 19th?
I can do that at 5 o'clock again.
Or Monday, the 18th?
I think we should set the time aside on the 19th, 20th, whatever it may be, but it's wildly pointless if nothing has changed between now and then. So what new information will we have before then? And that's not a shot at anyone here. It's just to make sure that we're being the most efficient with our time. What else are we gonna do? What's gonna be different?
You want Ann to create a new budget with the actuals?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're clear on what you're looking for. Are you looking for the budget packet with the year-to-date number, the actual, or the FY '26 year-to-date updated number? Is that all that's changing in that budget packet? And then you guys are going to recommend the cuts to me?
So the year-to-date, and then another column saying what you budgeted for the 26-27 budget.
So you
With
want,
the-
you
what do
want this instead
So
of
that's fine, so
December?
I'll compare it then, I'll compare it to 26-27. I can do that.
I was just gonna update the FY '26 July through December to July through
May,
April. Yeah,
or
like,
whatever you can.
right. Is that, like, you don't need that July through December column in there, too? You just want the updated year-to-date,
July through December.
right?
Where's the
For
July?
FY '26.
On the budget, the fourth column is FY '26, July through December. That's how the budget is prepared. What Ann's saying is she'll give you July through April. That's what you're asking, correct?
Yes, up to date, yeah.
And that's the only thing that needs to change in this packet, like,
And
you
that's
guys are going to
the
recommend
percentage
cuts to me?
Of what we've spent, of each line.
So you want a percentage from,
So say what we spent up to the year, like up to this point, is it 60%, 70%, whatever the year-to-date percentage is of that line.
okay,
When's our meeting?
from budget to actual.
And then it would be helpful, I believe, if we have another column showing what was budgeted for 26-27. Because for us to compare it, like.
That's the FY
you
'20.
corrected me on
It's
the
in,
total lines.
it's in there.
That's the FY '27
That's
proposed.
FY '20 The budget you have in front of you, the first column is the FY '25 actual. The second column is the FY '26 budget that we're living in. The third column is proposed for next year, FY '27. The fourth column says how much we spent year-to-date when we create the budget. The budget is created in January. You have the expenditures up to December. What Ann's saying is she will extend that fourth column to now include expenditures here.
Perfect.
But your third column is exactly what you're asking. It's the proposed budget.
That's fine, I just didn't realize, I knew you were gonna do the same thing, that's all. I was,
But at this point, I'm not putting proposed changes in this budget packet. I'm just putting
Okay,
the, right? Is that,
Expenses, yes.
okay.
Could I also ask Greg earmuffs before the next meeting, if we can please reach out to the towns to see how they will handle that 150, to see if we're talking about $1 million or 882,000.
They, right.
Perhaps it can't hurt to ask again if they understand what we're, okay.
Yeah, so it's closer to $1
So
million.
the only request with that is Superior Court.
I know you don't want to get me involved in it because you think it's going to make it contentious, but the normal course of events would be I would send an email to to the two town solicitors, asking the solicitors to please explain the basis of the vote.
Do you want to do that?
And leave it at the legal level.
I don't want to do any.
But if you don't, I mean, again, I'm asking the committee, I'm not gonna do it unless the committee
Yeah.
directs me to
I
do it.
think that's a good idea.
Great idea.
Well, then vote on it, one way or the other.
All in,
Do the motion.
all in favor? All in favor of
Is it on
having,
the agenda? Can we vote on that?
it's budget.
Okay. Thank you.
That's the only thing we're discussing.
So what is the motion, please? What is
Just
the
to have
actual?
Greg reach out to both town councils,
No.
Town
I mean,
solicitors.
town solicitors, lawyer to lawyer,
Just explain the basis of the cuts and what their intention is going forward.
So it's coming from you instead of Ann, even though.
Right, that way, you don't, I'll be the bad guy, you don't have to put Ann in the middle of it. I can deal with it with the two attorneys, hopefully, in a they may have, look, they may have an explanation that will convince me to drop it. I don't know. I doubt it, but maybe.
do you guys agree with him reaching out?
Take a vote, take a vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
The only thing I would add is that if we could include some context of what it requires us to do here. I mean, it should be obvious, but what that really is meaning at the regional level as far as that money. It's not just coming out of the ether. That would be why I was looking for someone from the administrative to provide some context to what the actual impact of this $154,000 is on the regional budget.
Well, at this point, it's a rounding error based upon the 882,000, so it's just another 154.
Well, it's
We gotta go.
two rounding errors that we would rather not send notices to, you know? These are people.
You want to have either Ann?
I think they could
or
be a
Renee?
parallel exercise, no? Like, I mean, I
Well,
think
they
it's
can
nice.
provide the information to me, and I can
Sure.
reiterate it, if that's what you're asking. I don't know. I mean, what would...
I am but
what
one
would the
voice, and the
154
committee already voted.
You guys haven't voted on any cuts right now, so what would the 154 cut be?
So when's the meeting?
Can I just make a suggestion on the 154, if it is something that,
That motion passed.
the towns are not going to, no.
701. That motion passed 701, okay.
So what is the meeting date?
The meeting date
Well, we're
that's
still
thrown
trying to,
around,
what about the 22nd? It's a Friday.
What about the 20th? We had the 20th.
What happened to the 20th? I thought the 20th was the time.
okay with you?
What? The 20th, but someone said they couldn't make it.
The 20th is a challenge for myself.
I cannot make it half East Greenwich to six.
Walk it.
Okay, so what about
can?
Cannot make it half
No.
East Greenwich by 6.
what about the 19th?
The 19th.
19th is fine. I can be here at 5 again.
That's Amy's advocacy, but I think she.
She already said she
She
moved
said
it.
they should change it.
The next week,
What happened to the 18th, that Monday? Oh, that's not enough time.
Wednesday, the
You have to
27th?
prepare those numbers for the committee.
So it has to be posted by Thursday if you do it on Monday.
Yep.
Can she have the information to you by Friday? Can you give her the extra day and you look at it over the weekend, or does that all have to be given to you Thursday?
Friday's great, so we have it over the weekend. For me, Friday would be great.
Yeah, but will she have enough time?
Yeah, it's 3 days.
If I'm just updating the year-to-date total.
Posted by Thursday.
That's all you're asking
So I have to
for?
post it by Thursday. What time on Monday?
That'll be good enough.
Is Monday the 18th okay?
But I can't be here until 6 o'clock at the earliest, and that's
6
only
o'clock. And
to get
don't
here
get a
from East
speeding
Greenwich.
ticket, because we can't afford it.
6 p.m.?
That's the earliest, and I might be a little bit late, so I'm sorry.
She wants the numbers.
I think we all should have the numbers of what we spent year-to-date.
And then they want to look at your, that mo, the,
So is it the 18th we decided on now?
the
It's either
18th at
18th or the
6 p.m.
Either the 18th or the 20th, those are the only two dates.
Well, Brendan couldn't do the 20th,
Yeah, it was hard for
and I
him,
can't either.
The 20th?
Well, the 20th, I could do the, he can't do the
but
20th.
not till 7.
He can't do the 20th, and I can't get here till like 6:15.
So the
So I can do the 20th, I can do any of them, I'll make it work.
All right. Everyone's good for the 18th, is that correct?
I'm gonna, yep, 18th, 6 PM. And we're gonna just come with a bunch of cuts?
We're gonna, or Greg's motion, we could all sit on that motion that Greg put forward. Does that make
As far
sense?
as I'm concerned, Madam Chairs, I would just like to state that I think, you know, Monday, the 20th, not the 18th, sorry. It's been a day, is gonna be the last meeting that we have no other choice, that one vote, we're done after the 18th, no other meetings afterwards. That would just be my suggestion, that, you know, no matter how the cards fall as they may, but I think that the 18th is, you know, the end-all cutoff date for anything regarding this conversation, just in my opinion.
All right, I'm gonna make a motion to adjourn. Oh,
Can
I'm
we
sorry.
just circulate what Greg proposed as well? I'd like to take a look at what you proposed.
Greg, can you actually put that in
You want me
writing?
to draft it and send it to everybody before I?
Can you have that motion
possible.
drafted
Yeah.
that Greg made, so we can all kind
He
of
said he's
digest
gonna
it?
draft it.
He's gonna send it
I
to
mean,
you.
just to let you know, it'll be very simple, it just, you know,
You're gonna send it to me?
the taxpayers voted, the treasurer, based on the charter, sent the sheet of liens and computation of liens.
Oh, wait, you're talking about
The motion to,
no, you're talking about the town councils.
no.
She's talking about, no, he was
Oh.
talking about the town council.
Will you send me the motion
Town
that you were
solicitor.
talking about
Isn't that what
possibly
you're talking about too,
doing?
Brendan? That's what Brendan's talking about too.
Both of them want to put,
Well,
you to send us what you had said in terms of,
That
hey,
motion.
put yourself in a deficit,
Yeah.
Knowing you have the money coming in.
Oh, okay. Do you have it?
No, it's not that complicated. You voted to, you said you voted to level fund every line item. And that's simply what you're gonna do. You're gonna vote to cut your budget to level fund every line item. It's not, no more complicated.
Knowing you have the money coming in from other revenue sources.
You don't say that in
No, okay, I know that, but that's.
you know, whether that's legal or not, whether you get comfortable with that or not, why not? Whether you, I mean, you, that was just a suggestion, I'm not telling you that has to be the motion.
Greg, could you please come back, see if there's any legal implications for us doing that on Monday? Would that be possible?
It's not legal to run a school in a deficit.
You want to have an executive session?
Sure, executive session sounds great, legal advice, can we do legal advice for 5 minutes prior?
Okay, well, now you have to come to the meeting. I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.